If you want to make me a poison blend, offer me a bottle of Yquem and say to me, but you drink it alone. If you don't share a bottle of Yquem with other people, it has no interest. Nothing. And in general, with wine, when you drink good wine, you want to share it with friends. I'm sure my father is listening, and he is very proud. He was one of the pioneers of Fronsac, and his idea was to share the progress and not to be alone, to make good wines. It comes from Michel Roulier, the father of Brigitte, said, if you are just alone to make good wine in an appellation, you are nothing. So we have to be together. And I think it was a good idea. Sometimes we have the label, Here you have 2001, and we have also some very, very old, a good size of bottle when you are two, if the other doesn't drink. We will have 2 bottles of 86 and 85 to taste now.
As you may have gathered, I have a small love affair with the appellation Fronsac. Château Villars, my first encounter is almost 15 years ago. It was actually on the same day I visited Château d'Elem, but Villars has always been in the back of my mind, and it's another one of those estates which for me are in the forefront of what is going on in Fronsac. This is what wine used to be all about. A lot of people started thinking of wine as an investment. More people should treat wine as it is. It's a beverage. You should always enjoy it. And this is one of those blokes who just love to taste something fun. He might go down and fetch something interesting from the cellar.
But it's fresh. It's still fresh.
Refreshing.
But you can imagine when he was young.
Yeah. And I would have expected the sort of the tannin structure to maybe outlast the fruit a little bit, because that sometimes happens in Bordeaux. But I think this is aged really nicely. This is superbly balanced. You're the 7th generation. Was this property created by your family, or is it even older from before?
The brand Villars, we are sure it exists from the end of the 19th century. The brand Villars. And but before, the vineyard was very, very small. And even in the beginning of the 60s, this vineyard was 22 hectares, and today it's 30 hectares. And we didn't plant new fields. We bought just blocks around, but we do not create a new vineyard. It's just we bought some parcel to the neighbor.
Fronsac has been a bit forgotten for a while, and do you know why?
After the Second World War, a lot of negotiants had money in Bordeaux and also in Libourne, and a lot of estates were free because the worker didn't came back from the war. The family sold, want to sell the estate, and the negotiant has money, and it was the big boom of Pomerol was after the Second World War, because they bought new soil, new terroir, and it was close to Libourne, we have between Libourne and Fronsac, you have another river, which is called Isle. And the bridge didn't exist at this time. So it was not so easy to come to Fronsac. So when you have new terroir to buy, new estate to buy on Pomerol, easy to work because it's more sandy than in Fronsac. In Fronsac, we have more hill and more clay, and we make heavy wines. And in Pomerol, it was easier to make light wine. And when you are negociant, you have some estates in Saint-Emilion and in Pomerol. What will you sell? What will you promote first? The wine of other vineyards or your own wine? And it grows during the 50s, the 60s. And we must wait the arrival of Michel Roland in Fronsac. We bought Château Fontenil in 86, combined with Colin Ferranbach, was a guy from New York, who bought Château La Vieille Cure. And they said the terroir is very good, the wines are very good, but the commercialization is not so good. Why? And they decide to federates 10 estates around them to promote the name of Fronsac and Canon Fronsac and to combine the two. Because before this time it was a kind of fight, you know. We call that cloche-merle, or if you look the comic, Asterix. It's like in the village, the small village of Asterix. They fight every time with the freshness of the fish. And for us, it was the freshness of the wine. But it also contributes to the bad promotion of Fronsac. So the real new style of Fronsac starts during the 80s with Château Fontenil, La Vieille Cure, Dalem, Villars, Moulin-au-la-Roque, Les Trois Croix, all the brands you have there today, La Rivière, La Dauphine. Voilà. Of the favorite vintage of my father. The favorite one was, it's very strange, but the wine is really good. It was 81. But 81 was very special because it was the first try of harvesting with machine of my father. And the guy came and make a row and another and come back, and my father say, "Get out." But at this time, he had no workers, you know, nobody to harvest. And it was raining during the harvest 81. So every night he went to the station in Libourne to get workers from the train. And so that means the harvest take longer than usually. And he harvests very late, and finally at the end it was very, very shiny. So that means in 81 it was really ripe. It was an accident, but it was really ripe. So that's why in Villars, the 81 are very good, because he harvests very, very late. Next time we will taste 81. Oh, maybe we can do that today. But there is no label on it. So it's blind tasting.
This is the 81.
81.
What I absolutely love with this 81, first of all, how smooth it is. It's really silky. It's like this sort of fig compote in the finish, where you have this really sweet figs, which just lasts and lasts and lasts. And you have this really nice acidity and freshness. And the texture is just so polished. Really, really elegant.
Oh, it's a little silky.
Yeah. Very silky. It was most pronounced in the 85 of this tiny touch of mint, which is really interesting, because it gives this really nice lift to the nose.
But I think it comes from Cabernet, the touch of Cabernet, and also the late Merlot. Because in our calendar of harvesting, we start with Merlot, early Merlot, and Cabernet Franc, and late Merlot. we have still the bones.
You will just have a blast with Thierry. You can have a lot of fun with a lot of wine producers, but this is the guy you want to go back to the pub with. Nothing flashy. This is how a farm used to look like in Bordeaux. Going a little bit back in time, you see Bordeaux, which is now disappearing in a very, very fast rate when the old family estates that was run generation after generation after generation, these places are disappearing very, very quickly. It's absolutely wonderful that these places still exist and that they still make lovely wine.
Checking everything? Yeah. The people, they want a level of maturity, but no alcohol. And with the Merlot, it's very complicated. I remember in vintage 2020, we went with my employees in the cellar and we hit grapes. You know, that's, for me, that's the best sampling. You eat grapes. And at this moment, the level of alcohol was 14.6. And it was in the middle of September. And the guy said, why don't you start? It's not ripe. Yes, 14.6, it's not ripe. I said, you taste it? Yeah, okay, the skin are not ripe. And if you harvest at this time, you are quite sure to have very unripe tannin, you know, not soft tannin, but aggressive tannin. And finally, it takes 5-6 days more, and we harvest because we had rain, and after that, it was okay. But the problem is, if you harvest a Merlot today with the weather we have, under 14 degrees of alcohol, the risk is to have unripe tannin and a little bit aggressive or green tannin, and finally, it's difficult to make a soft and drinkable wine. That's every time a balance. So that's why I'm a fan of Cabernet Franc for the future or Malbec, because you have less tannin and not such level of alcohol. But I think it's a good. I don't want to forget the Merlot. Merlot is very good variety for the region and for Pomerol, for Saint-Emilion, for Fronsac. I have no doubt on that. But we need to have. In the past, it was more or less 80% Merlot and 20% of others. I think in the future, it could be interesting to go to 60% of Merlot and 40% of different variety and work on the rootstock. I think the best Cabernet Sauvignon in the world are mainly in the Medoc because the cycle is very long. And if you go in a country like Chile or the southern California, when you have a very short cycle for Cabernet Sauvignon, okay, the level of alcohol is 14.5, but the maturity of the flavor and the maturity of the tannin are not so good than in the Medoc. Because it's not because you have sugar and you have a technologic maturity, that the maturity is complete. Tell me where you find very good Merlot in the world. It's difficult to find very good Merlot in the world. In the south of France, I'm not a big fan. In California, you can find some, like Cabernet Sauvignon. You have also very good Cabernet Sauvignon in Northern California. Okay, in Chile, yes, if you go in altitude, but it's not so interesting. And some variety, that's the same for Chardonnay, that's, everybody do Chardonnay. But where is it good? Champagne? Burgundy, some place in California, and some place you can find some, but it's not as massive as you can find in Burgundy.
I guess there's another reality to actually producing wine than the sort of dream of just having a dinner outside the chateau and there's always wine on the table, there's wine in the cellar.
It's a dream work. when it works. But as all activities in agriculture, you have cycle. Sometimes you are very high, and when you are very high, you think the time is very short, and and you are on the low side, you feel the time very long. It's not only to make wine and to have a good place to live. It's making wine. It's also meet people everywhere in the world. People interested in the wine. Most of these people are kind people, are happy people, and you can also meet other producers. I have many friends in Italy. I have many friends in California, and finally, when we talk about our problems, it's the same, and we have the same problem in the vineyard and the same problem to sell wine, and we try to improve the quality. And finally, it's a very rich life to do that. So I have no regret to come back to the vineyard.
Sort of almost velvety dark fruit character, dark plums, blackberries, and you also have this sort of truffly notes, which I think is interesting.
22 was a very comfortable vintage to work in the vineyard because the climate, the weather was dry on the period from April to August. So we start the harvest on the 14th of September and we finish on the 29th. So that means it's an early vintage. The average start of vintage here is around the 24th, 25th of September. Okay, you can imagine to make a better job during the harvesting time, but it costs a lot of money. On a small period, you have to invest a lot of money for only 2 weeks. And so if you don't sell, if your wine is no more than 25 euros, it's very difficult to compete for that because you have to be reasonable with the cost of the wine. Yeah. You have to box in your category. Just in your right category, not over. It's very dangerous. And I remember in the middle of September, the level of alcohol was over 14.5. And when you taste the grapes, you didn't feel it was ripe. And so it was a little bit dangerous to start too early.
There's dark fruit, of course, but you have this red fruit nerve in it, which I think is really interesting, both on the nose and on the palate. Mm-hmm. Where the 22 is very dark on the fruit, this is a little bit brighter or redder, even if it's lots of dark fruit here as well. But like blackberries, you have these really ripe blackberries, and then you have those which are still ripe, but they're more acidic and a little bit more towards the raspberry sort of. And I think this is like a mix of these blackberries.
I think also when you have raspberry, it comes from Cabernet Franc. 83% Merlot and only 17 of Cabernet Franc. I don't want to make pure Cabernet Franc every year because I think it's very risky. Some vintage is not made for that. But I think the future of Bordeaux will come with more Cabernet Franc than today.
A bottle of Fronsac in general tends to compete with a 70 to 80 euro bottle from a lot of other regions, from in my point of view. And most of these wines are 30 to 45 euros somewhere in the shop. But there are even some which are 25 euros. Great terroir, and it shows in the wines. We've had almost 45-year-old wine, still alive, kicking, no problem. Actually, what you should do, you should buy a case each year and you should forget them in the cellar, each case for at least 15 years, and then you will have a really, really happy retirement. Because these you can afford to open, unlike some other wines which will, should I open this bottle or should I buy a nice Mercedes classic car? That's a different story, but these you would never feel guilty about opening, and you will have just incredibly beautiful wines in the cellar.
You can buy Fronsac and buy the Mercedes.
Yeah, and you can actually buy the Mercedes and drink the Fronsacs. I agree.
Stylistically, it's a bit more tannins up front when they're young. I'm not afraid of tannins when you have the concentration, and especially not in a Cabernet/Merlot blend. Another one of these personalities in Fronsac, which I really, really enjoy,